Today we'll be discussing some of the more common halachas of walking in front of someone who's davening Shemoneh Esrei. We're not going to cover everything, but we'll cover some of the more interesting, some of the more relevant halachas. Before we begin, as always, this should not be relied upon for halachic psak, and a rav should always be consulted. The Gemara in Brachas Daf Chazayin Amud Aleph says, "Shema mina asar la'aver keneged ha'mispalin," that there's an Isser, you're not allowed to walk in front of someone who's praying Shemoneh Esrei. It's brought down by the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Kuf Beis of Daled. The Shulchan Aruch says, Asr la'aver keneged ha'mispalin b'seich daled amas. You're not allowed to walk in front of someone who's davening within his daled amas, within 7-8 feet in front of him. You're not allowed to walk. But you may be allowed to walk on the sides of him. We're not going to get into that right now. We're going to focus on more walking in front of someone who's davening. When is it allowed? When is it not allowed? So what's the reason why you're not allowed to walk in front of him? So the Mishnah Berurah writes, there are two reasons brought down by the poskim. The Mishnah Berurah says in Daled, the first reason is very simple. If you walk in front of someone who's davening Shemoneh Esrei, by you walking in front of him, you're going to throw him off and you're going to ruin his concentration. And if that's the reason, says the Mishnah Berurah, it's asur afilo isek az b'kriyas shema. It will be a problem even if he's not praying Shemoneh Esrei, but even if he's just saying kriyas shema, it'll also be an issue. You can't ruin the concentration of the one who's davening. However, there's a second reason brought down by the Chayei Adam. Chayei Adam kasavatam b'nei shemafsik ben hamispal hashchina. The Chayei Adam says the reason why you're not allowed to do it has nothing to do with ruining his concentration. It's that when someone is praying to Hashem, the Shechina is with him, and to walk in front of the Shechina would be an act of would be considered disrespectful. So there's two reasons. Either it's because you're going to ruin his concentration. The other reason is because the Shechina is there, and to walk in between him and the Shechina would be considered not a nice act to do. So the Bir Halacha writes from the Maimer Mordechai that the difference, the nafka mina between these two reasons would be, what if someone is davening with his eyes closed, or he's davening with a talus on his face? So if the reason why you're not allowed to walk in front of him is because it's going to ruin his concentration, if the talus is covering his face, he can't see you, then it won't be a problem. However, if the reason why you can't walk in front of him is because Hashem is there, and he's speaking to Hashem, and the Shechina is Shora there, and to walk in front of the Shechina would be disrespectful, then even if the talus is covering his face, it would be an issue. I actually also think that a similar nafka mina would be if a person notices that you want to take 3 steps back and you're in front of him, so he motions to you, sort of saying it's mochel. Meaning, can a person be mochel? Can a person say to the person davening in front of him, saying, "Listen, I know you daven, you finish before I do. Just take 3 steps back. Don't worry, I'm mochel." If the reason is because of concentration, then perhaps he could. But if the reason is because it's disrespectful because the Shechina is there, I'm not sure that you'd be allowed to be mochel. It's considered a disrespectful act, independent of what you think. But those are the two reasons brought down by the poskim. The Marsham writes in Das Torah, "V'nira lidim amad lehispalel b'makim sharabim oivrim k'goyim be'emsa beis haknesses." Some person decides to daven by the bima. And now, everyone in an area where everyone walks. So now everyone has to go to the bathroom, and they have to do whatever they need to do. And now they feel they can't walk past you because you plopped yourself in the middle of the shul. Says the Marsham, you'd be allowed to walk in front of him. Dami lekever hamazikas harabim demutel fanoise. There's a certain halacha brought down in Yeridei Siman Shin Samach Daled Sefhei that if the person is buried in the middle of a highway, and it's disrupting all the Kohanim and everyone because they have to walk around him, you'll be allowed to move the kever. You don't have the right to disrupt the traffic of the rabbim. So perhaps, as the Marsham, a similar thing would apply here. You decided to daven in the middle. Who says you have the right to do that? However, he ends off tzarachi, and I'm not 100% confident. Rav Avigdor Nevinsel in Pirish Beyitzchak Yikare on Mishnah Berurah, on this halacha, he doesn't quote the Marsham, but even though the Marsham was unclear, he paskins beferish that it's mutter. He says, "Avalim amad b'makom shemiyud l'rabim kepesach haknisa," meaning if a person davens right in front of the entrance of the shul, so everyone needs to get in and out. A person is not allowed to forbid everyone from walking in a certain area. If you're davening in a place that everyone goes, then people are allowed to walk in front of you. He also says, what if someone decided to daven in a place that his concentration will for sure be destroyed? People are walking in front of him the entire time. So Admor Zatzal, which is Rosh Zalman Orbach Zatzal, Omar Shemutel Laver Lefanov, you're allowed to walk in front of him. The EU Afsid Anashe, because he ruined himself. If he put himself in a place where his concentration is automatically going to be destroyed, then you're allowed to walk in front of him, because he did it to himself. I'm assuming this applies according to the reason that the Isser of walking in front of him is because of his concentration. If you understand that it's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was there, then I'm not 100% sure what he means. Just because he parked himself in front of an area that his concentration is going to be ruined, I'm not sure why that would make a difference, but that's what he says. And Rosh Zalman himself, though, Hichmer. Rosh Zalman himself was machmer for himself that he wouldn't walk in front of him. The Marsham in Das Torah continues that it's possible by a katan, that if the person davening is a child, even if he's higil chinuch, he's 9 or 10 years old, you'd be allowed to walk in front of him. That's what he says. There's such a possibility that if the person davening is a child, you'd be allowed to walk in front of him. But he says, though, that if you're going to ruin his concentration, you should be a little machmer, but in theory, there might be makom to be mekel, but it's not 100% clear whether he paskins that way confidently. Rosh Zalman Orbach is quoted in the Sefer Halacha Shloime Perches, Halacha Lamed Hey, that katan ha'omer b'tefillah, if you have a child who's davening, im lo higil chinuch mutar lava kenegdoi, v'im karagil chinuch aser. Once a child gets to the age of chinuch, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old, once he gets to that age, you're not allowed to walk in front of him. So that theory that the Marsham had, that it will be mutter to walk in front of a child, Rosh Zalman disagreed. And they quote on the bottom, the Sipur Rabbeinu, that Rosh Zalman used to say, Al Hagoyin Rav Kook, the Rav Kook Zatzal, Shepam Kisharatza Lotzeis Bepesach Shaben Beisai Lebeis Midrashay, Rosh Ha'imid Shem Katan B'Tfilah, the Rav Kook wanted to walk from his house to the Beis Medrash, and at the entranceway he saw there was a child davening, v'nesatif b'me'iloi upanav yotze derech pesach habayis havaragil, meaning he took a lot of time to go out the normal way. He didn't want to walk in front of a child who was davening. So Shlomo Zalman used to say that if Rav Kook was machmer, then we should also be machmer. The Kaf HaChaim writes a very interesting halacha in Siman Nun Gimel Sif Tes. Kishem she'asur laver neged ha'mispalel, kach asur laver neged ha'omer kaddish. Something a lot of people don't know, that when the chazan or anyone in the shul is saying kaddish, you're also not allowed to walk in front of him. He quotes this from the Chidah, the Bikri Yosef, that the same prohibition of walking in front of someone who is davening Shemoneh Esrei, you're also not allowed to walk in front of someone who's saying kaddish. But he does say, this is quoting from the Ben Ish Chai, I believe, Hadasa laver neged ha'omer kaddish hu metchilas hakadosh ad damirim ba'olma v'imru amen. Meaning, the whole prohibition is from the beginning of kaddish yiskadal until damirim ba'olma v'imru amen. But once he said damirim ba'olma v'imru amen, now he says the end of the Kaddish, which is Al Yisrael, or Yehei Shlomo Rabbah, and Ose Shalom, and Teskabel, all the additions at the end of Kaddish, you're allowed to walk in front of him, because that's just a minig, that's not the real Kaddish. The real Kaddish is the first part from the beginning until Ad Damiran Ba'olma V'imru Amen. The Eish Lavram of Bechech writes in Siman Kuf Beis that if you're on your way to do a mitzvah, you'd be allowed to walk in front of someone who's davening. He says over here, La'avar kadei l'shmei kaddish. If you need to go to hear kaddish, you could walk in front of someone who's davening Shemoneh Esrei. Because he says, or if you have to go to the bathroom, we know that holding in the bathroom is an aver of Bal Tashaktu. You're allowed to walk in front of someone who's davening in order to use the bathroom. Because he says the real reason for you're not allowed to walk in front of someone is because it'll ruin his concentration. But says, meaning that's the way the Eish Lavram was assuming, not Libchai Adam. Says the Eish Lavram, if the whole reason is that you might ruin his concentration, it's a perhaps, it's a doubt. You're not necessarily going to ruin his concentration. So because you're on your way to do a mitzvah, which is a certainty, you're for sure going to do a mitzvah of hearing Kaddish or be part of a minyan, whatever it is, because you're on your way to do a certain mitzvah, you don't have to be worried about the potential, the suffix that you might come to ruin his concentration. Now he doesn't mention the reason of the Chaye Adam. The Chaye Adam's reason that it's disrespectful because Hashem's there, it seems like would be a problem, but we'll see in a minute that it might be okay. The Marsham in Das Torah continues that if you're going to make a minyan, to be the 10th man of a minyan, or to be in the first 10, you're allowed to go, because if the tzibur, a chiyuv of the tzibur, you have an entire congregation waiting to fulfill a mitzvah, it overrides the personal issue of walking in front of someone who's davening. And in the Sefer, recently printed, Shiurei HaRav Elyashiv Zatzal, on Brachis, Daf Chavav, Rav Elyashiv said that a Kohen who wants to go to Duchen, to bless Nesias Kapayim, is allowed to stand in front of someone. He's allowed to pass in front of someone who's davening, even to go wash his hands. He says because both reasons don't apply. Because the reason not to walk in front of someone, because he might come to ruin his concentration, he says, first of all, you don't have to be so worried about that nowadays, because our Shemoneh Esrei we don't really concentrate anyway. So that reason doesn't really apply. And the second reason, because it's separating, it's walking in front of the person davening and the Shechina, and it's disrespectful, he says that's only when you're walking for your personal reasons. But if you're walking in order to do a mitzvah, then of course Hashem's okay with it. Hashem's happy if you're on your way to do a mitzvah, and therefore it's not a problem. Any questions can be sent to Zakatinsky at gmail.com, AVIZAKUTINSKY at gmail.com.